Okay, 7 o'clock. So at this time, I will call the June 7th, 2022 regular meeting of the King William County Planning Commission to come to order. Ms. Turner, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fluger?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Greenwood?
Here.
Mr. Bree?
Here, thank you very much. The next item is the review and adoption of the meeting agenda. We do not have a revised agenda, just the one that y'all handed out. So do we have any additions or subtractions from the draft sent out last week? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood, were you an aye?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is the consideration of the May 3rd, 2022 draft meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any corrections to the minutes? None? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Got a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Individuals have 3 minutes to speak, and those representing groups have 5 minutes to speak on any planning matter other than tonight's public hearing. You'll have a chance to speak at that public hearing on that particular matter. But any other planning matter that y'all like to speak on, I'll open up the public comment period at this time. If you state your name and your address, and the public comment period is open. Anybody?
Good evening. My name is Sybil Rose. My address is 3656 Custis Mill Pond Road, West Point. I've lived in King William for 20 years. I have 3 homes and 450 acres that I take care of, mostly in forestry. I'm going to play this video while I talk about the dog ordinance. I've been dealing with kennels on my property for at least 8 or 10 years. Sorry, I've got to redo this. I'm not very good with technology. But at any rate, it's just been an ongoing problem. The kennels were put about a foot away from my right of way, 50 feet from the property line. They've been in violation for at least 5 or 6 years. The main problem, of course, is the barking. My neighbor doesn't believe in barking collars to stop them. During hunting season, it's really horrible, especially after the leaves fall off. Sometimes they cry all day, the dogs, because they have no food, and that's unpleasant. During COVID, when I was at home trying to work, it was almost impossible some days. And then during tax season, when I was off also trying to work, that wasn't very effective either, because they were barking sometimes for hours. I'm not a young woman. I'm sorry, I need my sleep at night. Finally, zoning decided to take action this fall. In October is when I made another complaint, when there was maybe 8 or 10 dogs. And I thought, well, finally, I'm going to get some relief. And apparently at the time, that's when the ordinance changed from the 200-foot setback to 100. And my first reaction was, what were you thinking? I mean, are you trying to make my life as miserable as you can? And I thought, well, I read it and I thought, well, 100 feet with screening is probably better than 200 feet without a visual block. But in the meantime, months went on, 6 or 7 months, the dogs were still there. And I know my neighbor can build a house in 6 months, but the kennels did not move. The report said that the dogs were moved, but they would be moved for the day, I guess, and then back, because I took videos in April when the dogs were still there. So at any rate, the dogs did get moved. The new ordinance says that all kennels must have screening approved by the zoning administrator that creates the visual block from the closest side property line. In the emails that I've sent, there is no screening, and it seems like they're making an exception. I haven't gotten a response to my answer from a month ago, but it appears that because I have some trees in my yard, that no screening is going to be required for the dog kennels. They have been moved 50 feet, and I will tell you that 50 feet has helped because they're still in front of my house. And every time I sit on my porch, they bark. And never mind in the summertime, the feces and urine sits in the kennel. It's never removed. It's hosed off where it sits, and the stench and the odor and the flies is unbearable. I really think that this ordinance needs to be reconsidered. I'm not sure why it changed. Anyone with 5 acres isn't hunting 5 acres with dogs. They have to either rent land or they turn them loose on my 450 acres, which they're not supposed to, but it happens. It just happened right in the middle of turkey season, and it was disruptive to the hunt club that rents my property. I'm mostly concerned about the lack of enforcement. I think it's a very important consideration when you go through these ordinances. If you're not going to enforce them, like right now, there is no visual block whatsoever between the kennels and the line. There's nothing. And if it's not going to be enforced, well, then why have them? On my property down on the river, the neighbors hired a contractor that put a structure in the 50-foot RPA zone where nothing is allowed. And the response I got from the county was that they didn't have enough money to enforce the Chesapeake Bay Act. And it was built on a vertical bluff where the erosion is increasing now because of the deck that was not permitted, because you can't get a permit. And still, I see the problem with enforcement, and I think it's a really important consideration when you draft these things. So that's the crux of my statement tonight, is about these dog kennels and the new enforcement. And the new ordinance, I think 100 feet is just too short. And as I stated before, the new ordinance doesn't take in consideration someone who buys a lot and hasn't built a house yet, because it also has a setback for a house. And so someone can build even closer, possibly to a house, if it's a vacant lot. But in my situation, I had no idea until I lived beside dog kennels what a nuisance they are. So I think we need to really address these things so they don't disturb my sleep or anyone else's. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you aware of the issue?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've actually,
We can talk about it later, but as long as you're aware. Thank you so much. And while we don't have a dialogue with the public comment period or the public hearing, I will add that it was a massive undertaking to revise the ordinance, and there were a few things that slipped through. And later tonight, we'll be discussing some of the issues. I'm not going to call if that was one of them or not, but I think it is, isn't it? But anyway, so a few things slipped through, so we'll be revising that as well. So would anyone else like to speak during the public comment period? Anyone else? Do you have anybody online? No one online? Okay, at this time, I will close the public comment period. Thank you very much for speaking. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing for conditional use permit 01-22 for Mr. Charles Sneed. Ms. Graham, would you speak to the application first?
So tonight we have before you application for a conditional use permit in order to operate a campground at 281 Roanoke Trail. The campground would consist of 4 platform campsites, a larger platform gazebo, 6 recreational vehicle sites, a primitive tent camping area, and 9 additional campsites. The property would also have a check-in office, dump station, guest house, bathhouse, with a laundry, boathouse, a large and a small gazebo. The applicant currently operates a B&B with a max occupancy of 8, plus 1 camping area with a max occupancy of 6. There are also additional recreational facilities that people use daily. With this, we have received numerous complaints over the last few years about noise and traffic coming from the applicant's property. So this is the plan that the applicant submitted, showing the different areas. The other page 2 might be a little more, okay, it's blowing up a little bit. So you can see the different areas here. And of course, everything in the area is zoned AC. And this is an aerial view. And the green is his property. And these are some pictures that Andy took for me. This is the area for the RV parking, the dump station, and the tent camping site. And this is the lane going towards the dwelling. And this is the area for the check-in station. That area, same area. This is the view of the RV parking area, tent area, check-in station, and dump station area. And this is the proposed parking area. This is the outdoor kitchen that's existing. Main house. The dining area. Pool area. Okay, these are the covered tent sites that are around the pond. This is the guest house. And this is the entrance going out onto Roanoke Trail. And that's on Roanoke Trail, turning to go into the gated entrance to this property. And some of these, in some of the pictures you will see, like the covered tent sites and the outdoor kitchen area, the guest house, they have not been permitted. They were constructed without permits, and he has been cited for those violations.
Anything else?
Any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Graham?
What would you estimate if this was approved, what the new capacity for the area would be?
If the planning commission recommends approval to the board of supervisors, we would recommend that it be approved with conditions. I believe there are 13 conditions listed. So you may want to visit those. On that, we did list the occupant load of 50. So.
Ms. Graham, do we have any information on health department approvals?
Mr. Sneed, I believe, was working on it. I don't have the paperwork on it.
Anything else? Ms. Knight? Mr. Greenwood, any questions for Ms. Graham?
Probably not until after the public hearing.
Very good. The proposed traffic count, was that something you had prepared as the applicant?
Mr. Sneed, he presented that to us.
Okay, very good, thank you. Normally we give the applicant or their representatives a chance to speak as well before the public hearing as well. So would you or one of your representatives like to speak? Okay,
And he has a brief PowerPoint as well for you.
thank you.
Good evening. Were you able to provide the no, that's okay.
Just tell us next. There's
Okay.
a term for you.
That's fine. I brought a clicker that only works on the wall, but not on the TV screen, so it's pretty much worthless. Good evening. My name is Charles Sneed. I live at 281 Roanoke Trail. I'm the owner of Zebulon's Grotto. Thank you, Ms. Graham, and the planning staff for preparing my CUP. I know a lot of work goes into preparing these things. So thank you. Also to the Planning Commission for hearing my request tonight. I'm here tonight to propose a small economically feasible campground to be located on my property. This property serves as my home within the community where I live. I have a vested interest in making it a valued landmark for my business, for my guests, for my neighbors, and King William County. I'm also a retired landscape architect. I purchased this land 25 years ago and have been actively building the site into what is now a destination location for my guests that come from all corners of the country. This property and business is my livelihood and my full-time endeavor. As a landscape architect, I design and build and actually construct most of the items on my property. I even built my own home. So I'm used to both designing and the construction trade. Zebulon's Grotto was designed to feel organic, and other people have called it many things, but it is a unique destination location with a word of mouth following that I'm very proud of. And I'm proud of what it means to so many of my guests that come back year after year. Currently, I have 3 use by right permits for the grotto as a bed and breakfast, a tent camping area, and a recreation area. 3 uniquely separate activities, 3 separate permits. The grotto, while open year-round, is mostly a seasonal business, open running May through October. Again, we're open year-round, but warmer season brings out people who want to recreate on our property. My guests have been very supportive and complimentary, and I've been given a 4.9 Google rating. The grotto feeds the local economy via my guest purchases of food, fuel, accessories, and it feeds the local tax base in King William County. The first time I applied, I first applied for the campground permit, CUP, back in 2017. At that time, major challenges with the neighborhood and the neighbor and the roadway and the need to remedy it and other personal issues caused me to withdraw the application prematurely. So this is the second time I'm applying for this permit. Back in 2017, the major complaint was about the shared roadway. So in 2019, at great expense, I relocated my entrance closer to Roanoke Road and put in a 1/4 mile gravel roadway, clearing trees and placing this new roadway. Because the shared use of Roanoke Trail by my guests was problematic for my 6 neighbors that still use Roanoke Trail and access to their home. The following year, I added a remotely operable gate, and that helps me better regulate guest traffic and curiosity seekers, to be honest. My property and the reasons guests visit it is what the newly updated comprehensive plan talks about. Guests, travelers, tourists coming to King William for leisure activities similar to the objectives of agritourism. Small owner-occupied establishments offering guest services around the county. My property offers hospitality, recreation, leisure, lodging, for recharging or getting back to nature, camping, hiking, swimming, basic socialization offerings. These things are in short supply here in our beautiful county. On the screen is the preliminary plan that I'm required to submit. It talks, hopefully you can still hear me if I move over, but basically my property is bound by Roanoke Trail that runs along. And my property is bound by Roanoke Trail that runs almost the entire length of my property and ends at one of my neighbor's homes. That roadway, acts as not just a border, but also a buffer between myself and my neighbors along this side. There are 3 neighbors here, and there are another 4 neighbors down towards the end of the 7 neighbors are. The road that I put in is close to Roanoke Road and comes in and makes through my property and comes into my property. So all my guests are able to bypass the residential homes that line the roadway. This diagram also shows just the overall shape of the property, the length being the low point, like I said, the Roanoke Trail being the high point. Both the properties, my neighbor's properties and my property slope in both directions. So their homes are typically lower in elevation, similar to my home being lower in elevation, and the roadway being that center area. The campground would terrace down, and so this let me back up and say that the majority of my existing structures are in the corridor, kind of my downtown area where my home, swimming pool, our food service, our camping area, our covered tent sites, they're all located in this lower area. So it's all kind of grouped together. So the second phase of going with a campground, going to campground status, would move a lot of that activity or add activity to this part of the property, but have this have 2 sections of business use centrally located within the property. So as Sherry mentioned, the second office will be located here. That's a proposed building. If you're driving the RV, you can pull down into one of the individual drive parking spaces. So again, check-in office, pull through if you're driving an RV, showers, restrooms, laundry, other activities, other services would be here. Additional have a little bit of circulation through the site. And again, the terracing of this ground to fit the items in place, be able to ideally keep the buffer of natural trees and keep natural trees here. This greenery here would probably be replanted or new plant material that would come in. The parking for guests, whether they're here for the day or coming for overnight usage, is want to expand our existing parking. This area, the ground is level. It's a great place to put parking open with no clearing that needs to be done to pull that off. And work well. This is where my old entrance gate was. I used to come down Roanoke Trail to access my home here. So this gap is closed now with a solid metal gate from 7 or 8 feet high. That's about the thing I think I need to point out on that particular drawing. Yes, if we can go to the next slide. This slide here points out just the surrounding neighborhood. From 30, turn left on Route 650 to get up to Roanoke Trail here in my driveway, which that's what turn right in pretty close there. The VDOT substation, Mr. Wainwright 6-acre welding facility at his private home. There's a large 44-acre tract of truly forested green space. Thomas Fox has a 65-acre agricultural production lot there. We move on to Thomas and Ellen Davidson. They have a consulting business. There's a 23-acre vacant lot back behind me at the end. Vic and Debbie Anderson live at the end of Roanoke Trail. The Roanoke Trail kind of dead ends onto their property. Lisa and Peter Mason have a 22-acre parcel. They also have a 5-acre vacant parcel that they maintain. Richard and Terry Metter have a 7-acre parcel, and Joshua Wright lives next door to Mr. Metter. Amanda Mills has a 5-acre parcel, and Alan Cosby and his wife live on a 7-acre parcel close to Roanoke Trail. The western side of my property is full of larger lots, whereas the eastern side is more residential homeowners, and overall it's obviously split out that one. All right. All right, we can go to the next slide next. All right, this is an aerial view. This aerial view, it's difficult to see the change in topography, the hills and valleys that are located through the woods. For instance, on this, again, western boundary, my lake being that orientation point, Roanoke Trail comes down through here. My new driveway, snakes through the woods in this area, comes into my circular parking area as it stands right now. So the area through this heavily wooded area, it's fairly level, fairly accessible through here. Once you make the turn with my property line, the property, the grade starts to inundate up and down hills. There is, being that there's a pond here, there are 2 ponds here and here, so naturally this area starts to get low and a little bit hilly, and the outflow pipes from my pond dump into a creek area. So back on the back part of my property, you found wetland and some other steeper grades, wetlands, creek area. Along the back side of Vic Anderson's property, my property joins his, it's kind of back into more of a level graded area here. Again, my thick, 20-foot wide evergreen screen that's 15 feet tall, very, very thick dense edge, runs the full length of these properties here, the field area. And then once you get into the woods section of Roanoke Trail, it's just a wood line buffer at this point back to Roanoke Road. The Roanoke Road, if you're not familiar with it, continues on for about a mile and plus, and is located on both sides with residential lots, agricultural farming, mostly extended family homes, all the way to a private section, private road that moves down the river. This drawing also shows the distances from my house to my neighbor's homes in all directions. Some 7 or 8 football fields out to the homes that front on West River Road. 6 football fields. From my house to Dick Harrison's house, 2 and a little bit, not quite 2.5, but almost 2.5 football fields. Lisa Mason's house got 2 football fields. To Richard Meadows' house, a little bit less than 2 football fields. Then we increased that distance 2, 3, 4, 5 football fields, 5 football fields to the green light zone. So the homes are spaced out pretty far, and so it kind of adds to the rural character of the area. Makes it very conducive to campground life, and having guests feel like they are further away. My guests have commented that they feel like they're in the mountains when they come to my property because it's got rolling terrain, it's got high points, low points, and has enough topography to make it interesting. That's one of the reasons I chose this property when I was looking for land 25 years ago. I looked at a lot of different parcels, and this one, because of the topography, it was very interesting to me and caught my eye, and I'm happy I did that. Let's see. All right, so having said all that, I'm well aware of the list of concerns from my neighbors and the neighboring properties, and they are twofold, traffic and music. But before I go there, I want to talk about the recommendations of the planning board. As Ms. Graham mentioned, there are 13 conditions that are in her package for recommended conditions. Conditional use permit means conditions. We may approve this with conditions. So out of 1 through 13, the majority of these recommendations are code requirements, things that I will abide by, that I will comply with because they're the code, they're the zoning code. But there are 4 other areas that we can discuss, like for instance, number 2, safeguards against unnecessary amplified noise, gunfire, fireworks, explosives, no ATVs, that type of noise control. My guests are prohibited from bringing firearms, from playing their own amplified music, from using guns, shooting off fireworks, lighting off explosives, whatever that might be. I will say that I own an ATV for maintenance and for property maintenance and for my own entertainment. And so one of the conditions of this, recommendations of this particular number 2 was no ATVs. So I don't want to allow my guests to have ATVs. That would be indeed problematic, but I'd like to be able to continue using my own ATVs on my own property for, again, maintenance and my own entertainment. So that's the recommendation on number 2, that I will safeguard against unnecessary noise, and that if I could keep using my own ATV, that would be awesome. So that leaves next number 5, 6, and 11, I believe, to go over. All right, number 5 says the owner is required to have a separate entranceway for guests without using Roanoke Trail. All right, there we are. The next slide is up. So this recommendation is problematic. This recommendation says you cannot use Roanoke Trail anymore. It's your own way. My access easement is parallel to Roanoke Trail as it intersects with Roanoke Road. And the way my roadway comes and my exit gate is, you would think that, oh, just keep going straight, run your driveway straight, and you'll be out at Roanoke Road. Not an issue. What's the problem? Well, the problem is VDOT says no. VDOT says that 2 driveway exits don't hook together, one of them being a business, problematic to them for their approval process, and that it's dangerous and could be confusing. Issue number 2 with running my driveway straight out the Roanoke Road is this wetland area. So while there are ways to purchase wetlands or wetland banks and use this wetland for VDOT still not approved the double driveway side by side. And so my proposal is to widen the entrance of Roanoke Trail. Right now, it's about 16 feet wide. I've widened it to 36 feet wide. This would give my guests plenty of space to bring larger vehicles in. It will allow the rest of my neighbors to get past any of my traffic coming in, turning in, passing, or attempting to pass each other. At 36 feet wide, that's equivalent of 3 traffic lanes. And so with 3 traffic lanes, my neighbors would have the opportunity to pull their car to the side to check their mailbox. I do it. I see my other neighbors do it. Stop, get access to the mailbox. They need a safe place to do that. This proposal for this entranceway also shows a secondary entrance into my property. Right now, only this leg exists as an entry-exit with the automatic gate. I would add a second entranceway so that there'd be less chance of bottlenecking or RVs or trailers, having to back up in this way. We keep those separate and keep things moving, reduce the chance of this backup occurring out of the road. So there are benefits to my neighbors for following this plan. If the asphalt paved and maintained by me, so that their maintenance costs for the road would be less dust, less gravel being moved around, a safer place to pull off and check the mailbox, and smoother, quicker ingress and egress for my guests coming in and leaving.
Is there anything else, Mr. Steve?
No, I'm trying to find my place where I left off. I'm sorry.
We'll wrap it up fairly soon. We've got public hearings.
I hear you. All right, so I want to make the point that Roanoke Trail is approximately 3,000 feet long, and I'm asking to continue to use about 140 feet of Roanoke Trail for the access of my campground if approved. All right, so that gets us to the next recommendation, number 6. The property shall have a maximum capacity of 50 persons, including guests, invitees, owners, contractors, and other persons. This particular recommendation is not economically feasible for even a small campground. The engineering costs, construction costs, development and maintenance costs are just too high for a 50-person maximum campground. A warm weather season is only 5 to 6 months. And the majority of people venturing out will be in that time period, that warmer weather 5 to 6 month period. Well, a 50 person max on site can work on most weekdays as an average. Weekends and especially holiday weekends can balloon up with reservations for day campers or overnight guests for people who suddenly want to get away on a holiday weekend. And that would be our business. That is our livelihood. And that's how we would, maintain the property, provide additional employment, et cetera, in the county, pay more taxes. The campground code currently allows for a maximum of 20 campsites per acre, 6 people per campsite. 6 times 20, 120 people or guests per acre is what the campground code currently allows. Now, times the acreage of my property, that'd be a huge number. My most concentrated camping area, however, is only 4 or 5 acres. So 4 or 5 acres times that maximum of 120 people per acre would be over 500, close to and over 500 persons as an amount. But naturally, that is not a practical number of people to have on my property. Well, 50 is too low, 500 is too high. My request is for a maximum capacity for holiday weekends, visits, potential CUP events would be capped at 200 persons. Max total for my 36 acres. And this is the equivalent of 5.5 persons per acre on my property. So I'm requesting ability to not exceed 200 persons with, of course, health department approval. Finally, number 11, there shall be no outdoor use of amplified music or sound. I'm requesting some clarity on this, recommendation, which seems too broad in a general manner. I use speakers with built-in amplifiers every day. And this recommendation, I use them around the pool for basic music, basic enjoyment, amplified speakers at a reasonable volume. So this recommendation could be taken to the literal extreme and say, no speakers, no outdoor music, period. If music, for instance, can still be faintly heard at the property line, for instance, is that a violation? I just don't want to fall victim to an open-ended, like, human sound meter or a vindictive neighbor looking to set me up for a violation. So I just need some way of clarifying what that no outdoor amplified music requirement might be. So I recognize there's opposition to me and my business and maybe a little apprehension about me operating a campground. But despite my disapproval rating with my neighbors, I've been a conscientious neighbor in spite of their past actions. And I would appreciate the opportunity to respond to any opposing comments or concerns that might come up. My application for CUP meets all the requirements of section 8644. And I think I've covered everything. So I want to thank you for your time and consideration for hearing my conditional use application for a campground today from my destination location. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Steve, if you would stay here for just a moment.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? First, Steve. Mr. Greenwood?
No, I'm okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sneed, you said you moved in there 25 years ago.
Well, I bought the property 25 years ago. By the time I built my house and actually moved in, it was 17 years.
Okay. When you purchased that property, where was your access?
What was my what?
Where was your access? To the property?
My address?
Your access to the property.
Oh, it was, we'd have to go back. It was down Roanoke Trail, across from the 5-acre lot that the Masons own.
Okay,
I don't know if that gives you a reference.
Was that subdivision in place at the time?
No, it was not. I was the first resident in that area That also appealed to me when I bought that property. I thought, wow, there are no other houses back here. This is awesome. And at that time, attempted to buy additional land, and land prices, of course, don't stay still. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I do a couple. So
All right.
the traffic counts, first off, he currently is allowed 14 people maximum under the existing permits he has,
The 8 is for the B&B.
and 6 for camping. So the traffic counts, those appear to be very precise. So this is based on the past, and it ends in May. So I'm guessing this is based on the past 12 months.
Yes.
And so I noticed you have 35, 16, 8, 20, 70, 60, 50. So those weren't allowed, correct?
No, they are allowed. So I have 3 separate permits. I have the bed and breakfast permit. I have the tent camping permit,
Which is total 14.
total 14. My 3rd permit is called recreation area. And it is it allows guests to come on my property without the requirement to stay overnight. So that's that traffic count.
That's an awful lot of folks. In December, so you have a number of violations over the years. It's in our packets, but for the benefit of the folks who are here, and by the way, I very much enjoyed seeing your property. I don't know if you remember, but I actually came to visit you when you applied for the additional.
I do remember. I know last time we talked about it, I went, oh man, I thought you were a different guy. But no, I do
it's
remember.
the same
Thank you.
guy.
I appreciate you.
Beautiful property.
Thank you.
Very, very idyllic, very peaceful. I thought it would be a neat thing.
I appreciate that.
But you have a number of violations.
Sure.
In 2016, you had, see, the first violation is in the packet. For those of you who don't have the packet, in 2016, you were cited for operating an illegal campground. So you're aware. If you weren't aware before, then you were aware then.
Yeah,
Other permits.
yeah.
And then in 2018, you were cited again for code violations for the same 3 sections of the ordinance for violating the illegal campground. And then 3 months after that, you were cited for having day passes and holding special events. And then this past December, you received violations for land disturbance. In the intervening 5 months, you then built structures without consuming on top of that land disturbance. So
No.
you were aware of the need to get permits for all this, or you were not?
I am aware of the permitting process.
You just chose to ignore it.
Well, I am a very hands-on person, and like I said, I have a lot of design experience, a lot of construction experience, and projects. I'll start a project, and it might take me, I'm going to say, I know my guest house, for instance, it took me 10 years to complete that. And I started out with a building permit for that. And over the course of 10 years, I kind of lost track of, okay, I'm whittling away, and I'm not getting the next inspection and the next inspection and the next inspection. And it fell by the wayside in that particular situation. I remember the economic downturn in 2008 affected my ability to continue pumping money into that particular building. And so there was a long time where it sat vacant, and then the economy improved and I started up again. So had it been like a home, you start a home, you want to roof it in, you want to move in. And so it's a series of continuous steps to get that done. And with my projects and also running a business at the same time, I failed to get the permits and the inspections and keep track of the next level of inspection and the next item, and
But for the 5 edifices you built since December, that wasn't stretched over 10 years. That was stretched over a few months, and you didn't even apply for any initial permits.
No, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Something built from since December. Is he talking about the wood platforms for tent camping?
Yes.
Had built 4 without permits, but not
Oh, so he built those before.
recently.
So,
We
so,
went
so when he
out
was
there.
cited for the disturbance, he already had built those 4 platforms?
The floor had already been built.
Correct.
There was another one under construction when we went out there.
Okay.
And in the case of those, it started out with the attitude that these are wooden decks in the woods for tents. It's a wooden deck in the woods for tents. And then I decided, well, wouldn't it be great? The tents I was renting, they were standard tents. The rain would come, the wind would come, it'd knock it down. The mattress would get flat. There were issues with renting a standard tent that's up in your yard, in your camping area. So I thought, let's move to these wooden platforms. While we're at it, let's go ahead and put a roof and keep it covered. Well, once you go from wood deck to support columns to a roof, apparently you're now in building territory, requiring a permit. That one did get by me in the instance for those tent camping platforms. That's how they were constructed without a permit.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Any questions from y'all?
I just have a comment. You are very familiar with codes. In the business you're in, you should have been aware of the need for permits for all the work you've done in there.
I hear you.
And I find that to be a willful violation.
I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Mr. Greenwood, one more chance before we open public hearing. Any questions for Ms. Graham or the applicant?
Yes, I have a comment to make too. Like I said, I am the Board of Supervisor representative, and I just wanted to bring up to everybody's attention, past offenses can, of course, be found illegal and fined or otherwise punished, but don't have any effect on current permit applications. And the board has taken legal steps against Mr. Steed for some of those past offenses, but that has no bearing on the application that he has in the process today. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. I'm going to verify it with Andrew when I have a chance. I just haven't had the chance to get to talk to Andrew yet.
Well, and you certainly have until the Board of Supervisors meeting to do that, because whether we recommend approval or recommend denial, y'all will be seeing it. So you've got some time with that.
Exactly.
And my point bringing it up is I, again, very much enjoyed visiting your site and visiting with you. The lackadaisical way you've approached the permitting process leads me to be concerned that you would be very interested in following any conditions that we placed on you. But Ms. Graham, in terms of following up with violations, that sort of thing, can you describe the process for your team getting into the site to find these violations? Was it very easy to get in, or was it difficult?
He did let Andy in a couple of times. When Matt went out there, he did not let Matt in. We did go back with a inspection search warrant. He let us in, and we, since then, we've called and arranged, when we didn't have guests there to inconvenience anybody. And it's worked, but he's worked with us, to get on the property.
Very good, thank you. Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Nothing else for the applicant or for Ms. Graham? Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience and y'all's patience for this whole process. At this time, we're going to open up the public hearing for conditional use permit 01-22 for Mr. Charles Sneed. As before, individuals have 3 minutes to speak, and the applicant got considerably longer, but he was the only person speaking on his behalf. But anyway, speakers will have 3 minutes to speak, or if you're representing a group, you have 5 minutes. If you state your name and your address, I would appreciate it. At this time, the public hearing for that conditional use permit is open.
Hi, my name is Lisa Mason, and I'm at 392 Roanoke Trail. I'm going to try and hurry through this because I'm going to speak because of the association, as the president of the association, so I'm probably going to take a little more than 3 minutes, and I'll try to hurry through what I have here. and I'll read it just so I don't miss anything. I've read through the narrative Mr. Snead has provided with the application and the response the county has put together regarding the expansion of Zebulon's Grotto to a campground. I'd like to comment on the inadequacies and the impacts of Mr. Snead's plans. First, I don't understand how a guest house belongs in either a campground or a bed and breakfast. It seems that Mr. Snead doesn't understand the county ordinances. The plans indicate that he will include handicap parking, and yet that is wholly inadequate according to the current ADA specifications. All businesses open to the public must provide accessibility to all portions of the business, not just a gratuitous handicap parking stall or two. I hope the county will accept nothing less. Next, the county ordinances approved last fall by the Board of Supervisors specify that campground, accessory structures, and the like can be no closer than 200 feet from any property line, not just an R1 suburban residential district, as Mr. Snead states in his narrative. Again, I'm not sure he understands the county ordinances. And according to his drawings, there are numerous new and existing areas that would be in violation. On a similar note, the campground must meet the landscaping requirements for the current county ordinances. Since the pond is one of the main recreation areas, it, as well as the hiking trails throughout the property, should be screened from the neighboring properties. This is in addition to providing screening all along Roanoke Trail. The next item was raised in 2017 under the previous application for a campground permit. It's acknowledged in the plans that a new septic system is needed. If the submitted plans are overlaid on the soil feasibility map provided by Fire Rock Geology and Soils, it shows that the road and the property and RV parking, as well as some of the parking lot, cover a substantial area of the only feasible site for a new septic system. The next item I'd like to address is the use of Roanoke Trail for a commercial entrance. When portions of the farm were purchased to subdivide, the developers entered into an easement and road maintenance agreement dated on November 12, 2010. This agreement is a legally binding document registered with the court, required when a property such as this is subdivided. According to the document, major improvements to the road can only be made with a majority vote of the member landowners, of which Mr. Snead is not. Two things need to be understood. There are a majority of landowners that would never vote to allow Mr. Snead to make changes to our road, and we would fight for our legal right to not allow him to do that. The last item affects my home directly. Mr. Snead states that he would only have amplified music between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. As you know, Mr. Snead has again incorrectly interpreted the current ordinances. It seems that he is unaware that no amplified music is allowed unless he has applied for an event permit, which is not allowed at a bed and breakfast. Though much of the music and noise coming from the current configuration may be from the pool and near the pond, as he suggests, the geometry and the open spaces within the trees funnel the noise directly to the front of my house. The trees in the other directions absorb much of the sound, especially in the summer when fully leafed out. But because of the substantial amount of trees that have been removed over the years and their location, the sound is no longer buffered and is directly projected towards our home. You can see that on the map he put up earlier. And according to number 2 of the county's recommendations regarding the permit, noise impacting the surrounding area must be mitigated. How is Mr. Snead going to do that? The noise that comes from the current bed and breakfast is substantially disrupted to the enjoyment of our properties, especially on his holiday and his party weekends. As you see, the facts I have highlighted here deserve serious consideration, both by the applicant and the county before a permit is recommended or issued. It seems that Mr. Snead doesn't have a good grasp of exactly what he is asking the county to approve and how far afield he is from what the law requires of him. He certainly hasn't considered the impact this proposed business would have on our quiet little community. Thank you. Any questions?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Just, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Peter Mason at 392 Roanoke Trail, adjacent to the subject property. First, I want to start out saying that I'm completely opposed to this expansion of this, and since nobody's talking about it, let's put it on the table, clothing optional resort that's in a neighborhood with single family homes and children. Not appropriate whatsoever. I do want to, I respect what Mr. Greenwood said about the issue of existing violations and not looking at that in regards to how one approves or does not approve the current application. However, I do want to amplify your remarks, Mr. Chairman, about the history and the pattern of behavior that Mr. Sneed has with regards to zoning and building ordinances in the county. As you stated, he received his bed and breakfast permit in April of 2016. By October, he had his first violation. He applies in 2017, early 2017, for the expanded campground with cabins, withdraws that. A year later, he's again cited for illegal campground. In September, he receives the campsite and the recreation area permits by right. And then in October, he's cited again for further violations. And then between 2019 and 2021, he adds all of these platforms, which were not approved by the zoning nor approved for building, this cafe and other structures for his guests. None of them were approved. None of them were inspected. At the guest house, which was originally the building permit for which was cited back in 2004. I hear the woe is me story about taking 10 years to build it. That's no excuse. These buildings, this isn't like someone who builds a shed in their backyard to house a mower and a couple of shovels. These structures are integral to his business, and he's inviting the community, he's inviting the world to come in and use structures that have not been permitted, not been inspected. How ridiculous is that? What kind of business owner does that, behaves that way? Do you suppose his insurance agent knows that all of these actions are taking place on unpermitted structures? So with that as the background, and in that condition, in his application, he does nothing to say how he's going to rectify any of these problems. And then to add to that, on Memorial Day, he has the audacity to hold yet another one of his functions, which is a violation. He has amplified music, which is another zoning violation. He has multiple campsites, which is a violation, some of which are, since we're using football analogies, less than an end zone away from the Roanoke Trail. And you could hear conversations if you just walk down Roanoke Trail. You could hear conversations of the people in his property. So that's not at all what any of the zoning calls for. And then just to top all of that off, just yesterday, a contractor of his shows up in our property, an insulation contractor shows up on our property looking for him. So he's continuing to build, continuing to do things. And it's just a pattern that I think this commission needs to take note of. And my recommendation, my suggestion, what you should recommend to the Board of Supervisors is this sort of pattern. Suspend this CUP application and place Zebulon's Grotto under a probationary period of 5 years. First condition is that all the illegal structures need to be removed. Then Mr. Sneed needs to keep his property open for any access by the county at any time, not needing a warrant to get on, but at any time that the county wants to come and inspect, they can inspect. And if he can maintain a clean record for 5 years, then this application can go back into the pile and be reconsidered at that time. I think that's a fair solution. And I think it would do wonders for the county in this particular application, as well as future issues and existing issues with various zoning issues, violations, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
I'm Richard Metter. I live just to the right of the Masons and directly across from Zebulon Grotto. We've been meeting regarding Zebulon Grotto. I think my wife and I talked about this since about October of 2016. We're familiar with all the violations. I'm sure some of you are, or you will be. It appears as though at times he casts rules and regulations to the wind. Now he's planning a full-scale campground. We enjoyed the first 3 years that we lived in this agricultural zone rural environment. However, we see our peace and quiet eroding and the AC rating not truly as it described, pending somebody else's desires. We moved here in February 2011. The B&B was granted on or about in 2016. First 3 years, that was no problem. We knew who lived there. We didn't see him. The builder told us about it, and we enjoyed our life there. After that, after the B&B, the traffic and the number of his customers exploded. His new road helped alleviate some of the problems like traffic on the trail, ingress, egress, which was a problem, big problem. The numbers grew even more exponentially almost, I use that word, but the numbers grew tremendous as he improved his establishment. I understand the county's interest in agritourism. And it's a sound promotion, sure. But this type of operation, and think about what Mr. Mason just told you, does this fit the type of agritourism you want? Well, does it? I'm curious. I think not. Given Mr. Sneed's propensity to cut first, bill first, and comply later, do you really think he will act any differently than the last 6 years? I've always thought a business should support and complement a community. And we could use that out here in King William for sure. And we're working, I know you're working that way. Not change it forever and rendering homeowners with a questionable future. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Victor Anderson. I'm at 397 Roanoke Trail. I live at the last house on Roanoke Trail, so I see everybody's lost coming to my driveway. There's several, hundreds actually. Here we go again. Charles Sneed is asking for CUP for a campground on his property at 281 Roanoke Trail. Just a couple of years ago, Mr. Sneed was also asking for the same thing, a campground. Mr. Sneed withdrew his request May 17, 2017, before he went to the Board of Supervisors. Okay, so what did he do? That's right, he opened a campground. No question. He's been running a full-fledged campground in this property. It's well documented. With 50 to 100 paying customers entering his property every weekend or during the week. That's a fair amount of business. That's why he wants to up it. What you're asking for is 50. He needs more customers. They're coming in and spending the night. He's got live stage shows, music playing all day, literally stage shows going on. You can hear it, see it. It's really disturbing to have a nice quiet neighborhood with that much activity right in my next door, within 100 yards. Zebulon's Grotto is a bed and breakfast owned by Mr. Sneed, which has been approved for 1 campsite and 2-bedroom B&B with a 14-person maximum capacity. That's never the case. It's always more than that there. How many hotels are there in King William? Can anybody answer that? None. Oh, but you'd be wrong. This is how he advertises his website. Do a quick Google search and look up Zebulon's Grotto. He advertises a 2-star hotel.
If you would address the commission.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure everybody saw this. You can look it up. This deed has been cited many times to cease illegal campground activity. I know you went over it, but I'm going to review this again. October 21, 2016, illegal camping. This was by Wally Horton. Okay. 2018, illegal camping. Again, this is from Bobby. I have a tough time with the last name, I'm sorry. This is October 25th, 2018. This is for non-compliance issues, offering pay day passes and special events on the property. Well documented by King William. Allowing overnight guests exceeding the occupancy capacity of a bed and breakfast and permitting single rack camping areas. Roanoke. This is December 17th. Clearing and excavating properties had a cease immediately order sent over. Sherry Graham. Have I left any of these planning commission people out yet in the last few years? I think everybody's had an opportunity to deal with Charles Sneed. Again, here on April 20th, notice of violations for, this is good. 2 freight containers located on the property have converted to a commercial kitchen. This place has never had a health inspection. Never had a fire marshal inspection. You know, if you're gonna have that many people over there, isn't it a danger, you know, for them being that crowded place? 4 roof platforms, attached guest house. You're supposed to have, I'm sorry.
We need to wrap up. If you have a few more things to say, go ahead.
This, hopefully this will be quick. So I would like to thank the Planning and Zoning Board for their hard work in the past 2 years in an effort to bring King William zoning ordinance up to date. Planning and zoning mission is to provide quality of life and life safety for residents and landowners of King William. Our community, we have experienced many violations by Charles Lee of our current zoning and ordinances with little or no enforcement by King William for years. Have not had the personnel or the funding to follow up on enforcement, but just adopting these new updated ordinances will mean nothing if there is no enforcement. The board also must provide proper funding to the planning and zoning department with capable personnel to have the opportunity to enforce the zoning. If illegal activities are allowed to continue with the full knowledge of the King William Planning and Zoning Department and the Board of Supervisors, and if someone gets physically hurt or worse, when adjacent properties owners' quality of life and safety along with property values are affected by the lack of response, the question becomes, who is responsible?
Sir.
All right, thank you. Oh, one last quick one. I want to, he will not get permission to expand on that trail. I won't have.
We don't normally have a back and forth, Ms. Graham. Do we have a copy of the Roanoke Trail? If you can track that down to the clerk's office or if one of the citizens has, that would be grand. Okay. Yes.
Chairman, Commissioners.
Ms. Graham. My name is Tom Davidson. I live at 15271 West River Road, western neighbor to Mr. Sneed. We're about, I think he said, over 700 yards away. We do occasionally hear noise. That is certainly traffic doesn't affect us where we're located. I think we do have other valid concerns though, and it's unfortunate and I'm disappointed to have to be here. I'd like nothing better than for a small business like his to flourish in the county and be successful and prosperous, but not this way. I think several things have gone wrong in that process, and I think they're very apparent to you, and they're less apparent to me, but I do have concerns about them. Number one being that neighbors like mine over on the other side of Mr. Sneed and elsewhere in the county, right where I live, wherever I might live, you know, when they move into an agriculture conservation area, zone such, I think they expect it to be a livable residential area if it's properly zoned. Now, that's not what happened here. Things changed, and they might have moved in thinking there was a bed and breakfast, but there's a large KOA with loud music. That's not following standards. That's what they actually live next to, and that could happen to me. You know, Mr. Fox's property could be sold. Our property could be sold. Somebody could drop in there and do these kinds of things. And if it's not done properly and oversight by the county, then why shouldn't this precedence continue for others? That's my number one concern. My second concern is that it appears very clear to me that the homeowner's already gone well beyond what he's permitted to do, and feels very much like he snubbed his nose at his neighbors, at you, Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, county regulators. I don't like that at all. I think he should know there are processes and regulations that should be followed. Certainly he does. To take 10 years to build something, and it's just annoying, just irritating to me. That's wrong. Another thing I think is wrong is the homeowner seeking approval for features and structures that already exist on the property outside of their current permitting. That's just wrong. Essentially, again, just approaching this in an unlawful or building and zoning manner. It's not proper. It's not right. It's not the way the county should be run. It's not the way citizens should behave. Apparently he's asking for more leeway with, I guess, the recommendations. And they seem to be very gracious, very forgiving for someone who has a pattern of ignoring, working around and using unusual rationale for those workarounds of county codes, building codes. Finally, to the county, for some reason, this problem is, as I said, I'm very disappointed that it's gotten to this point in my county. For some reason, it's been allowed to escalate zoning and building violations for, I guess, a number of years. And I think it's led to him being in a very difficult spot, having built outside the code and now having to be here and ask for forgiveness and going backwards on permits. And so I don't think something's gone wrong in the process with the county for oversight, where any citizen in the community should have to abide by. And that's wrong. I think that's wrong. So I think the homeowner should be allowed to have his bed and breakfast under the original criteria of whatever that was. That's what the neighborhood expected. And but that clearly is not what he wants to do. Maybe it wasn't from the beginning. I don't know. You know more about the specifics of these violations, but from all I've been able to ascertain by speaking with Ms. Graham, by looking at the documents, by hearing from my neighbors and reading in the papers, I think that they've mistreated their permissions, and I hope you will take into consideration my thoughts, even though I'm not right next door. As I said, I think this can happen to any of us, and it's wrong the way this is unfolded. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jeremy Shute, live at 580 Roanoke Road. Everybody has concerns. My biggest concern at this point is the traffic. Living on Roanoke Road past Roanoke Trail. I've lived there for 7 years, known my wife's family for the better part of 12. We've seen the traffic increase substantially. It is a 2-lane secondary road with no center dividing line and no posted speed limit. We've had numerous cars come down all hours of the day, all hours of the night. I've had people turn around in my driveway, 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't know who these people are. Don't know what's going on. There's no signage that tells people where they need to go. Don't know if that's against a planning commission issue that he can't have a sign. We've had trespassers on the property. People come, they stay, they want to walk down the public road. We have no problem with walking down the public road. It's a public road. We posted our property. We've caught people on the land, got attitude, got grief from people who've trespassed on the farm. At the end of the day, if you bring more people in, that brings more problems. I've had people miss his property, turn around in my field. I got ruts out in a pasture. We've got children riding bicycles because it's a dead end road. But everybody past Roanoke Trail is family. So it's our children. It's always been a safe haven for the children. 5 generations. And now you have people that come in 55, 60 miles an hour. I have to keep a close eye on my children while trying to perform work on my property, which takes away from my ability to enjoy my property. And I don't see why I have to deal with that. I don't see why I have to deal with picking up the trash. There's never been trash on that farm, because it's family. Any trash and litter on that road is coming from people who aren't around there. So, and I just ask you to really consider that. After multiple incidences, meeting people in that blind curve, people come off the trail, coming out of his property, don't even stop. I drive a truck pulling a trailer with an excavator. I used to drive a big service truck, weighed 30,000 pounds. That's my job. And when you pull a 4,000 pound car in front of a 30,000 pound service truck, I can't stop. And I just kill somebody. They come in from the road and I'm coming out. They just turn on the wrong side of the road and then just turn on in. And it's my problem if I hit them head on. I'm the one that's dead. I'm the one that's injured. I'm the one that can't provide for my family. I understand he's got to provide for him, his family and himself, but I got to be able to provide for mine. It comes down to safety for me. All the rest of it's kind of by the wayside. Safety has to be the number one important thing in this decision. You have to watch out for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leon Wainwright, and I live at 177 Roanoke Road. That's at the top of the hill before it drops down to where you go in the Roanoke Trail. So I'm gonna add a little bit to the safety part myself. For anyone that is traveling, say one of his events, and he says he wants to have about 200 people. I've watched the cars go by on his past events, and most time one person, sometimes two. So you're looking at probably 140 vehicles. And they have backed up that hill. And if he wants to have RVs that turn in there, I can imagine how far they're gonna back up that hill before someone drops over the hill and rear-ends someone. And that's my part too, is safety. And I like to relinquish the rest of my time to my daughter.
Everybody's taller than me. My name is Tracy Carlton. Maiden name is Tracy Wainwright. Used to be a teacher at King William High School. I grew up on 177 Roanoke Road. I currently live at 27458 King William Road. And of course, King William. I've drafted up a whole lot of things, and I know we're short for time, so I'm going to condense this. First, though, after hearing all of the violations, my first question, and you don't have to, of course, answer me, but just to ponder, is that these are laws that have been broken. And what do you call a person who has committed a crime? And if you think that he has and will only operate a campground such as which you may take your families, you have been greatly deceived. I'm unsure of how much time you spent just on Google or Facebook or on his own website. He does market Zebulon's Grotto as a bed and breakfast, but with the addition of glamping, with basic campsites, woodland hiking, and lakeside gazebos. So he already has that marketed. This sounds wonderful until you realize that all of this is an optional oasis for clothing, with all gender identities welcome, as stated on his website. Regardless of what sexual orientation is targeted, it is obvious through his website, other travel websites, various sexual oriented forums, and even Google reviews that the visitors to this campground know and participate in what's called a naturist lifestyle of open nudity and actions that are inappropriate for me to even detail in this forum. Memberships, overnight lodging, and day passes to enjoy the facility in its open environment are sold to people from many other states. Is this the recreation for which we wish King William to be known? Jesus Christ, who has all power and glory, and who has placed each of you as an authority figure on this commission, has also given you the power and the authority and the responsibility to make decisions that are appropriate uses for the land of King William County. In Luke 10, verse 27, he himself says, love thy neighbor as thyself. And I know that Mr. Sneed believes that his neighbors should act in love and allow anything he wishes to take place on his private property. But may I say in love that he is not and does not take into account love for his own neighbors. Before he built and began to operate Zebulon's Grotto, Roanoke Road was known as a road to go down to pick your own strawberries and your own blackberries. I remember Kevin Johnson riding his lawnmower up and down the street. Neighborhood kids would walk down the road. We would go see the horses. We would ride our bicycles. My kids, who are 9 and 12, can't even do any of that. Can't walk through the woods like we used to, meander through the woods, because I'm afraid of what they may see. The traffic up and down the road makes it unsafe for them to do so, and they're not even allowed to play in the front yard where I grew up. Now it's known as the street where the nudist campground is. It is known for a place of debauchery and immorality. Mr. Sneed came into our county and introduced something so opposite to our community's identity and our values. We can be tolerant of many things, but we cannot be tolerant of the negligence of God's morals. Where is the love?
I need to wrap up.
I will. Where's the love for his neighbor? Where's the love for King William County and its Native American reservations? It's known for history, its rivers, and for its closeness among its residents. So regardless of what Mr. Sneed has already built or plans to build, I offer forgiveness to him for already having done so, and ask him and ask you as the planning commission to deny this conditional use permit. 1 second, please. God will not be mocked. Whatever any of us
Mr.
sow,
Chairman,
we
she's
will
out of
reap.
order now. She needs to
And just
stop.
as God spoke to the Apostle Paul to the Romans, who also live within a culture of open sex, worship of nature and self, I
Mr.
urge
Chairman,
Mr. Sneed
she's
and the
out of
planning commission
order.
to cast off all these works of darkness.
Your time is running out.
Please change your mind, Mr. Sneed.
Please take her
And
off the
please, members
stand.
of the planning commission, deny approval of this permit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I would remind everybody that you should try to keep it to 3 minutes if you can, and not much more than that. Thank you all very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else? Is there anybody online that wanted to speak? Anyone signed up to speak? Okay, then last call. Anyone else wish to speak who has not already spoken?
You got that straight?
Okay. And action, Ms. Mason, I think you wanted to speak for the association. Okay, all right, very good. All right. Okay. Yes, Mr. Sluter will read the letter.
This is the letter that William Barber Jr. submitted to Ms. Graham. It says, "Good evening. I'm sending this on behalf of my family, the Farmer family, all of which live on Roanoke Road from Roanoke Trail to the end of Roanoke Road. Our family would like to oppose the request for a conditional use permit to run a campground on 281 Roanoke Trail owned by Mr. Charles Sneed. Our family has resided on Roanoke Road for many generations. We have worked and raised our families here. We want to maintain a safe environment for our families today, just as our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents did before us. Until the development of Roanoke Trail, Roanoke Road was only traveled by our families, Mr. Wainwright's family, and VDOT. This area was maintained as a working farm for many years. This gave us a safe place for our children to grow up. The county allowed Mr. Sneed to open a business under the rouse of a bed and breakfast. However, my understanding is that this venue already allows for day passes and memberships to the pool and campground. That is not typical for a bed and breakfast, but is more aligned with the campground or an HOA community. Since this home is in an HOA, I would have thought that any development like this would have to be approved by his neighbors. My understanding is that all of Mr. Snead's direct neighbors also oppose this development. I feel that the increased development that Mr. Snead is proposing shows a blatant disregard for all of his direct and indirect neighbors. We already deal with repercussions of his decisions. I do not feel that this is fair. The development of Roanoke Trail has increased the traffic on our road, which is a small secondary road. The road close to the entrance to Roanoke Trail has started to come apart. An increase in traffic will cause this to continue to get worse, costing King William County and the residents for unnecessary maintenance. We have all witnessed cars stopped and lined up on a summer afternoon trying to enter the property. This impedes the ingress of traffic on Roanoke Road. The entrance to Roanoke Trail is in a curve at the bottom of the hill. This is not a safe spot to have cars stopped on the road. We have all witnessed guests leaving Mr. Snead's property without looking to see if anyone is coming from the Roanoke Road. There have several times that we have had to slam on brakes to prevent accidents. I realize that Mr. Snead cannot be responsible for the driving habits of others, but I also realize that if this permit is granted, there will be more traffic and this problem will get worse. My understanding is that King William County has had problems with Mr. Snead following some of the protocols and codes of the county thus far. What will stop them from moving forward with more development without following the rules if we don't stop it now? I'm not an advocate for telling people what they can and cannot do with their property, but I do not feel that this property is large enough to support a campground. In closing, we respectfully ask that the King William County Planning Commission deny Mr. Snead's application for conditional use permit 01-2022.
Thank you, Mr. Slutter. As if no one else wishes to speak, I will close the public comment for the public hearing. Anyone else? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. What I'd like to do is have some discussion, and then I would entertain a motion. Motions can include, and I hopefully will catch all of them. We can recommend approval with the conditions as suggested by staff. We can make them more stringent, but recommend that they be made more stringent, be made less stringent, some combination of the two. We can recommend denial. We can, what I left off, we can table it. I'm not sure why we want to table it, but that certainly is an option as well. There might be other options. Have I left any out? Okay. So discussion. You might want to go first.
Oh, where to start? Well, first of all, thank you for everybody that came out tonight. In my time here on the Planning Commission, I've realized that when there are emotional happenings going on in the county, people tend to show up, and this is no different. Obviously, it's a very emotional issue at hand, and I'm trying to look at this from a objective, non-emotional stance. So bear with me here as I just make some observations. A couple things that I see that is objective is that first and foremost, there is a pattern of violations that have occurred over a period of years. That's very troublesome for me. Secondly, the amount of people that are against this is too large to ignore. And I don't know that any of the neighboring parcels have anybody in support of this, as a matter of fact. At least that's not been known to me. So I just feel like, given the violations that have happened, to grant not just an expansion of this, but a very large expansion of the operation it just doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like these traffic issues, people wandering on other people's properties, you increase the traffic, 2, 3, 4 times. It's going to really, if we think we're having complaints now, it would get much worse. I can only imagine how that would turn out. I feel like it doesn't make any sense to me to approve this when there's so many people against it and there's so many violations that have occurred over time. I don't know that the county has the resources to enforce a large conditional use permit. I think that At some point, we need to control these violations, and we need to draw a line as a county so that other people, other neighbors know where the county stands on these types of issues. And in that respect, I will not vote for approval for the conditional use permit.
Mr. Sluter, Mr. Wagner?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sneed gave a very glowing report of what his campground is and what he wants to do and how he wants to operate. And it's some of the buildings, some of the facilities are very attractive looking. And you would hope something like this would succeed. But it's very obvious to me that Mr. Sneed's deeds do not follow his words, not at all. He's shown that over and over again. What I'm seeing from all that's happened there is that Mr. Sneed is unable to control and manage his property to be used as any sort of a public facility or paid facility or whatever you want to call it. He asked that we allow 200 guests to come. We already have huge problems with traffic, with noise, with so many other things. I don't have any confidence whatsoever that anything would get any better. Mr. Sneed doesn't seem to want to really make it better, to make things more for his use than for the benefit of his neighbors. He has thumbed his nose at his neighbors. He has thumbed his nose at us, at the planning staff. The unauthorized building of so many things on that property without permits, without inspections. And as Tom indicated, when he is, well, just to sort of sum it up, when he has continually violated everything in his county, every ordinance, everything that has been proposed, he wants to blame it all on his neighbors. He wants to say that his neighbors are the ones that are causing the problem, not him. It's very evident from what we heard tonight that there are problems in the neighborhood that are being caused by Mr. Sneed's traffic, by his disregard for any kind of management or control. He seems to want to allow, it would seem to me that he just wants to allow people to come in and do whatever they want to do without regard to any control. He says he has requirements, no weapons, no loud music, no amplified sound, and so forth. But we continue to have that. So with that, when the time is right.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Ms. Knight?
There's a fine balance between trying to encourage business into our community, as well as allowing a property owner to have certain rights. As far as Mr. Sneed's request is concerned, and questioning him about some of the violations that have taken place on his property. Mr. Sneed, I've seen you at many of the meetings, both board meetings and planning commission meetings, and review of our ordinances as well as, probably our comp plan. I don't find your reasoning for taking 10 years for what I believe was a storage building to turn into a guest house as being sincere, knowing that with all these meetings you've attended, that what should have been done as far as obtaining permits are concerned. There are so many people in the audience tonight that have expressed concerns from a safety perspective, as well as concerns about just overall being a good neighbor in the community, that I do have concerns myself as far as your permit's concerned. I think that our county staff has tried to do a very good job of helping you with this conditional permit, conditional use permit being submitted. And I think that they tried to do a very good job of their recommendations. And the fact that even with their recommendations, you still had concerns about a lot of what was being requested above what our zoning ordinances already take into consideration. I just, at this point, don't feel like that I could support approving this conditional use permit at this time.
Mr. Greenwood.
Yes, yeah, thanks. I appreciate everyone's thoughts and comments. Looks like we had a big crowd. I can't really see everybody in there, but it sounds like we had a lot of speakers. And as I said, I mean, I'd be willing to give Mr. Sneed another try. Like I said, I have forgiveness in my heart, and as that lady said, it seems like we all should, but it seems like everybody already has a precondition that we're gonna not grant him this. That seems to be the way it's gonna go. But it may be the case. It may be the case that he wouldn't follow the new rules or conditions anyway. But it doesn't even seem like we're gonna even give him a chance. I mean, I'd be willing to try to give him a chance, but I'm gonna be overruled. But as I said, the board has taken into consideration disciplinary action for his previous actions. That is not the position of the planning commission to do. It's only the board's position, and we have just done that. Everybody's saying we don't follow the rules and ordinances as it is. That's because our planning commission and our planning department only takes care of complaints on a complaint basis. And this particular situation has gotten out of hand between the two neighbors. I don't know why there's so much animosity between all these neighbors in this neighborhood, but there is. And that's what we have to deal with. So we only deal with complaint-based results. There are many, many, many complaints of the ordinances and violations going on in the county, but we don't do anything about it because we're told nobody complains about it. And I feel we should go after all the complaints, not just pick and choose which one we want. And just because people don't like this particular situation that Mr. Sneed is in, saying what that lady said, God created everybody equal. If he created Mr. Sneed the way he created him, that's the way he created him. So we aren't to judge the way he acts and the way other people should think about him. So I'm just saying I'd be open, but it doesn't seem like it's gonna go that way. And I understand the way the people think. So we have to go with what they think. So thanks.
Mr. Greenwood, and unlike the other four of us, you'll have another chance to weigh in on this in a few weeks. So
exactly right.
So you have that option.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So 2 football fields sounds like a long way away, but you can hear karaoke 2 football fields away, and I've listened to it for a half an hour at a time. I've not listened to it all day, the whole weekend, week after week. The sound does carry, and again, it's fairly, some folks don't like it. The only other thing I'd like to say at this point is section 86-44, item 2 of the King William zoning and subdivision ordinance states that a conditional use should not be issued if the Board of Supervisors finds the proposed use will be injurious to the properties of the neighborhood, including traffic, congestion, noise, and lights. I think there's actually a spotlight shine for some period of time at one of the neighbors, as well as we've heard about the noise and the traffic. And so if this was a campground surrounded by agricultural areas and not basically rural residential, they're too large to be considered rural residential. They're close enough to be impacted. Based on all the things we've discussed tonight, I'm ready to make my decision, but I will need to have a motion made by someone, one way or the other. So would anyone like to make a motion?
I would,
Mr. Wagner, go ahead.
I will read a motion that I have just put together and we can discuss it after
Okay.
I've read it. Because I go a little beyond. Mr. Chair, I move that based on the propensity of comments and concerns about the owners of properties adjacent to parcel 29-72D concerning the abuse suffered by those neighbors by members and guests of Zebulon's Grotto and by owner Charles Sneed's nonconformance with county ordinances and notice of violations. The Planning Commission should hereby recommend that the board deny the request for a conditional use permit for a campground. And further, that based on the years of abuse of neighboring property owners, the board cancel all current permits held by Mr. Sneed for the bed and breakfast, campground, and any and all other uses of parcel 29-72D, except for the previous use of this property as a residence. Therefore, allowing adjacent owners to live in peace and tranquility of their rural property that they sought when purchasing their property.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Do I have a second? On that motion?
Motion seconded.
You got a motion properly seconded. At this point, we'll have further discussion. Mr. Greenwood, since you went last time, I'll let you go first this time, although before you do, I would like to agree with one thing you said. You talked about the violations all over the county, and we need to enforce them, and we absolutely do. In granting approval, if the Board of Supervisors chooses to grant approval to this applicant, we're sending a message that you can violate the ordinance of all you want, and then go get permission. We need to be consistent and apply the ordinances fairly and even-handed with everyone. I did want to agree with you on that comment, but do you have any further comments on Mr. Wagner's motion?
I feel it's a little bit over the top. We can't suggest more than what the ordinance is. This is just an ordinance for a conditional use permit. We shouldn't add any extra things in there. I mean, it should just be for it or against it. The board is who decides what kind of disciplinary action that we take against any owner. But if you want to put that in there, we can.
And that's going to be the wishes of the commission, if y'all want to or not. If you wanted to if there was a consensus for something different, we could ask Mr. Wagner we could offer a friendly amendment. Alternatively, we can vote on his motion. So what's the will of the commission? Are you all comfortable going forward with the motion as it is, or do you want to ask Mr. Wagner if you would consider a friendly substitute?
I think first and foremost, we need to vote on the motion to disapprove the conditional use permit.
Right, but he included additional verbiage, which I'm totally fine with leaving in. I'm fine with making it again, he's suggesting that supervisors withdraw these permits, and I don't know that I disagree with them. I'm prepared to vote for that motion, but it's up to the full commission as to whether you're okay with that motion as made, or if you would like to offer a substitute. So, and Mr. Wagner will agree to accept it. Otherwise, we would vote on his motion. If it's turned down, we would then have a second motion made. So, all right. So I've got a motion properly seconded. Does anyone want to make a further discussion, or do y'all want to help the vote?
I'll just say that I don't have any reservations about what Mr. Wagner read. However, I just want to make sure that there's no issues as far as our vote is concerned from a legal perspective to be able to move forward to the board one way or the other. So again, I have no reservations about it. I'm okay with moving forward with the vote with it.
Well, and again, legal may decide that, and again, all we're doing is making a recommendation to the board. They're the ones making the decision, and they'll have an opportunity for legal to say, this is fine, or, oh my goodness, you can't do that, and that's okay too. They will at least know our recommendation on the matter. So I don't hear a request for a substitute motion.
I think that as long as that's clear that we are recommending to the board to address this further, then just
So we have a motion properly seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion to deny the permit and do you have the full motion?
I went in to get it all. I was gonna try to get it to the record.
But y'all understand the full motion. Is that the correct statement? Mr. Greenwood, did you understand the statement, or did you need Mr. Wagner the motion, or did you need him to read it again?
No, that's why I disagreed with it. I don't agree
Okay,
with it. I'm
very
not
good.
voting for it. So, yeah.
In that case, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Trimmer, would you call the roll?
Ms. Hyde?
Nay.
You're voting on you're voting on the motion to deny the permit.
Thank you.
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Wagner?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Nay.
Fluger?
aye.
Mr. Breeden?
Aye. Well, thank you all very much, Mr. Sneed, everybody else, planning commissioners, thank you all very much. And that concludes the public hearing and vote. And the next item up is hopefully a little less contentious. Some of y'all might be interested. It's we'll take about a 2-minute recess, but the next item up is the subdivision and zoning ordinance for anybody that had concerns about that. Okay. Yeah, I voted for it. All right, Ms. Graham, old business, subdivision and zoning ordinance.
I know y'all are excited to get this together. Hopefully not too bad. As we briefly talked about this before, there've been a few things that have come up that we have run across that we wanted you to take a look at and readdress and see if you want to keep it as it is or if you want to make changes to it. Do you want me to briefly go through them?
Yes, if you would,
Okay.
please.
All right, so the first one is the Transportation Corridor Overlay District. Number 6, it talks about building exteriors. Building exteriors visible from US Highway 360 or State Highway 30 shall be approved by the zoning administrator. We're looking to maybe readdress that to be approved by the planning commission prior to zoning approval. So if they want to use the metal or some other type of siding, not hold a public hearing, but bring the renderings to you for approval or denial.
Okay. Any comments, concerns from Ms. Graham?
I think that's a good move forward. I would still, excuse me, I would still like to have seen some guidance as to what we expect from the development community for certain types of developments. And you all know my objection to certain types of siding. But there are other types of siding, for instance, in our what do you call it, mixed use development or, what do you call that, Sherry?
Well, I know we.
PUD, in the PUD development. The PUD development does list certain types of materials that can be used within the PUD development. I would like to see some types of materials that can or may not be used because I'm not quite sure how to put it because we've had objections when we redid the transportation corridor overlay ordinance in the past. We just did away with any reference, and I've objected to that. But I would just like to see some guidance on that. Otherwise, I think, as you have suggested, if we turn it over, if we give it to the planning commission to review, then we can have a lot of discussion on it. And I think with that kind of a discussion, we can come to pretty good terms on what we want.
We had the PowerPoint a couple months ago
Yes,
that showed the different
right.
ways that they can use the metal, that it really doesn't appear to be metal. It has a lot of architectural features. And that is sort of what we were.
And some of those are very good. Others are still visually objectionable. But some of the architectural shapes are better. And with that in mind, we could review those types of things with the planning commission. So with that, if y'all are comfortable with what you propose.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something, but if y'all want to go, if y'all like to speak about that. But if I may, then, so ideally, I like very much for our ordinances to make it clear what is allowable, what is not allowable. And this kind of slows the process down if these things need to be approved by us with some wording that we identify those things that we're sure good to go to include, and others may be appropriate, but need to be run by the planning commission for you to be approved or whatever. Would that make sense from everybody's perspective? So, are there some sightings that we know are, and again, looking at this by itself without seeing the text around it, I'm a little shaky, but is that something that would make sense to the commission? That again gives them some guidance up front. I can do this and this and this. And beyond that, I'll need to check and see. Does that make sense?
So like brick or stone.
Right.
But if they want to go with metal or vinyl or.
And if
wood.
there's some types that we know are good, they're durable. 10 years later, they still look good. They haven't gotten shabby. People like to build with them because they are durable and they remain effective. As much as possible, I love giving specific guidance which saves them trouble and saves you trouble.
You want me to reword this and add some materials like the stone, the split face brick, that type of.
I would, but again, what the commission as a whole prefers.
I'd be more interested in seeing what the list of unacceptable materials would be, and the price differences between the two, and whether or not it would discourage businesses from relocating here or starting here. I think that we need to make sure that we're welcoming, but in a way that does heighten the visible character of the county. I think we can all agree that we want a county that looks good too, right? And so like I said, I'm not sure on this one because I feel like there's a lot of opinions that could differ from one person to another that it just I just don't know.
So if we have consensus, we'd like staff to take another stab at it.
What I was gonna say is I agree that I think that there should be some more specifics around it of what we would like to see. But could it be worded in a way that if a request was made up and above what we know we would be okay with, that those could come before the planning commission if the requester, wanted something different. And that way it still leaves it open to not discourage them, but still gives them a parameter of what we would like to see. And then they can approach us if they are really that interested.
If we did have that in the old ordinance, no wood or metal, and I can tell you that pretty much the only thing that has come before our office is people wanting to use metal, which was not permitted in the old ordinance. That has pretty much been the only type of siding material that people want to use that we did not allow.
That's, I guess that's where I have an issue is if we allow wholesale use of the metal sidings and even the vinyl siding, some of the vinyl sidings are, I don't consider to be appropriate in a corridor like 360. And that's my thoughts. But given the choice, some developers are going to go for the cheap. And I would rather see our development reaching at least for some midpoint. That's going to be attractive. It's going to be make this corridor look like something other than a light industrial corridor, like one end of about 360 is right now. So it, I know a lot of people want to use the metal, but it's, in my opinion, it just cheapens the county.
Well, if you like, I will readdress this and specifics that, exterior materials that are permitted. And then anything additional would have to come before the planning commission for approval.
Like that word.
Are you all okay with that? Mr. Greenwood, you okay with that?
I didn't see anything wrong with what she said, because if it has to come before us anyway, it's up to us to decide what we want, and then we can decide what we don't want, what we do want. I mean, I disagree with what Mr. Wagner says. I like the metal because the stuff that we have allowed in the past, all the buildings that we made, put those awnings on those buildings with that material has rotted off. It's hanging down loose. They don't bother to fix it or sew it up. There's holes in it. It's moldy. I think a metal awning would look a lot better. And those new buildings that are metal lasts a whole lot longer. And I agree with him about the one thing about the vinyl siding. I don't think we should allow vinyl siding. Vinyl siding's the cheap stuff. So, I mean, if it says the way it is, it's approved by us, we decide. Everything comes to us and we decide, well, if they give us a plan and they show us what it looks like with metal, or they show us what it looks like with hardy board or whatever, concrete siding or brick or whatever, and then we decide if it's allowed or not. But I mean, I agree with also what Ms. Height said. If we have a few things that we're certain that we will allow, don't bring those to us. Let Sherry and her department, let them go through it immediately. Like you said, everybody seems to like brick. If it's all brick and it has a nice, roof, that can go on through without bringing it to us. But I mean, that's just what I think. I mean, either way is fine.
Thank you. All right, what's next?
So the next thing is agricultural use, private uses. Prior to the new ordinance, we had a setback for stables and so forth, and that got removed. We do get complaints on livestock, on the chickens. So we did add this area. Private stables and other facilities used for keeping horses or livestock shall be at least 100 feet from all property lines and at least 300 feet from any adjacent property owner's residence. Private stables or other facilities used for keeping horses or livestock must be located on a lot in the agricultural or rural residential zoning district that is at least 5 acres in size. On a 5-acre lot in an agricultural or rural residential zoning district, there may be up to a total of 2 of any of the following animals: horses, ponies, cows, or a total of 5 of any of the following animals: sheep, goats, swine, llamas, or alpacas. For every acre in addition to the first 5 acres, there may be a total of 1 additional horse, pony, cow, or a total of 3 sheep, goats, swine, llamas, or alpacas. This limitation does not apply to lots 10 acres or larger in an agricultural conservation zoning district. Poultry, including fowl, ducks, and other birds, kept for production of eggs for domestic consumption, specifically excluding roosters, geese, guinea fowls, turkeys, and peafowl, may be permitted in the R1 suburban residential zoning on parcels less than 5 acres in size, provided there are no more than 10 birds per parcel as a by right use. However, the birds must be kept in a coop and shall not be permitted to free range. In order to have more than 10 birds and/or any roosters, geese, guinea fowls, turkeys, or peafowl, a conditional use permit shall be required. Any coop housing birds must be located a minimum of 100 feet from the adjacent property line and at least 300 feet from any adjacent property owner's residence. No coop or pen housing the bird shall be located in the front yard.
Thoughts, everybody?
I like it. Does this entire section just apply to the R1?
The second half on the poultry, yeah, it's permitted by right in the AC, but you have a lot of your residential subdivisions that want to keep chickens.
I think in Rankin County allows chickens. So, it just seems odd they do, and we've had issues in the past, but.
A lot of places will require a permit, but they won't allow roosters. And of course, the guineas, they make a lot of noise, so do the turkeys and so forth. So that's why they were put in there as being prohibited in the R1.
Now, some coops are what they call tractor coops. They can be moved around the yard and people utilize those for fertilization, stuff like that. That last sentence on there, obviously, if some people might be moving it around their yard, is there a variance in there that we can include, being that something like that wouldn't be permanent, or do you think that matters?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, in the evenings, if they moved it back, I'm sure they're gonna move them to the grassy areas for the birds to eat, but they can move them back at the end of the day or move them close to their house where they meet that 100 foot and that 300 feet.
So your case, Mr. Wagner, Ms. Height, any concerns, questions?
I do have questions. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place for it. We address a lot of different type of horses, livestock, as well as chickens, etc. This doesn't really talk about fencing standards or anything like that. Is that addressed elsewhere in?
It's not. You want me to try to come up with something on the fence?
That's tough because again, I don't want to get into a farm and
But this is.
fencing for that. But from a private perspective, I also was curious about, didn't there used to be a standard for keeping horses or livestock that they had to have a covered shelter in the past?
There may be something under the animal control's ordinance. We didn't have anything in our ordinance regarding that. We just have that 100 foot from the property line.
Mr. Greenwood,
No, I was just wondering, it sounds good, but does this take into effect existing or is it only for ongoing moving forward?
Well, some people would be grandfathered in. I don't think we could go back to them that are already, with their animals and they could comply to something. But they've had the animal there for several years.
Right, it's like you said, we had all those complaints, at least two about chickens in the past, so that wouldn't apply to them, so they would still be able to have their chickens. Okay, I just was wondering, can we put something in, or we can't go back, can we?
No, can't grandfather, we grandfather them. Took my wife and mother-in-law to the dentist about 6 or 8 weeks ago on this beautiful spring day. It was around 11 o'clock and heard this rooster off in the distance. It was not a neat sound. And then about 5 minutes later, he did it again. And unfortunately, it was a very long appointment. I was out there about 2 hours. And I heard the rooster, and he was more than 300 feet away. And I heard it about 30 or 40 times. And I thought, how do the neighbors feel about this? And I talked to one of the neighbors, and they said, yeah, they drive them crazy. Is 300 feet far enough for a rooster? That's awfully close. And they have awfully powerful vocal cords. I'm not sure.
Well, you know, we don't even, in this, we're not even allowing them in the R1 district.
Okay.
But, you know, in the agricultural conservation district,
Okay.
it's hard to, you know, say you can't have roosters
Right.
in an ag district. So.
Okay, very good. I just was curious. So, all right. So we're good with that. What's the next one?
So then we get into subdivisions. So under exempt subdivision, every lot abuts an existing primary or secondary highway. Well, the new ordinance says every lot abuts an existing secondary highway. Oh, we got primary here. We added primary. The reason we added primary is in the old ordinance, our single lots, our minors, none of those were allowed to front our primary roads 30 and 360. Under the new ordinance, they are allowed to have an entrance off of 30 and 360 for every subdivision, but the exempt, the 25 acre plus exempt parcels. I didn't know if that was something you wanted to go back on, or you want to leave it like it is.
What's your recommendation?
Well, I think if we're going to allow all the rest of them to have it, we need to go back on the 25 acre exempt and let them have it. It would be the same wording.
What say you all? Start with you, Mr. Greenwood. You okay with that?
Yeah, that's okay.
Is I? And again, we have more time to, we'll have a public hearing for all this, but it's good for you to have a feel for the current thoughts of the planning commission. Mr. Sluter, Mr. Wagner, your thoughts? You all okay with that? Yeah. Okay. All right, what's next?
Okay, so the next one says any further subdivision of a previously exempted lot pursuant to the exemption shall constitute a major subdivision. Wanted to add in except for family division and shall be subject to all applicable governing ordinances and requirements. So like you have your 25 acre exempt parcel and you have a family that purchases it and they want to break off 3 acres for a son or daughter. Do we not want to allow that, or do you want to allow that family division?
I think we should allow it.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yeah, I allow it.
Is I've got mixed feelings, but since the rest of the commission is for it, I'm fine with it too.
So the next one is cluster subdivision. It's very confusing to people. It talks about the improvements. Cluster subdivision shall comply with all requirements outlined in section 86-454 of this ordinance with the following modifications. It's got number of lots. Cluster subdivisions are allowed one lot per 5 acres. But then it goes down, lot area, lots shall have a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet per lots served by both water and sewer, 20,000 square feet if lots are served by public water or public sewer only. And we have 30,000 square feet if the lot is not served by either public water or sewer. And if it's not served by public water or sewer, 30,000 square feet just isn't large enough. So I was recommending that go to 40. Just under an acre.
Folks, what's your thoughts? Y'all give it
That part of it, yeah. I kind of like to break that down when we're looking at allowed one lot per 5 acres. Okay, so if you got a 100-acre subdivision, for every 5 acres, you can have one lot. So that would be 20 lots on a 100-acre subdivision.
But we have the 30-70 on the cluster, so 30% can be developed and 70% has to be in conservation anyway. So it comes up to.
So you've got 20 lots on 30 acres is what's allowed. And your lot sizes are based on water, sewer, and so forth.
But the
So you
max
could
covered
have-
would be 30%.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Greenwood?
I'm okay if y'all are okay. I mean, if that's what Ms. Graham thinks we should change it to, I'm okay with it.
I'm fine with it, but while we're on cluster subdivisions, and again, I apologize, it's been a difficult time. The cluster subdivisions, there's a certain percentage that they can build on, a certain percentage they need to leave vacant. They're currently, well, either the old ordinance or the current one. I thought it was the old ordinance, but I wasn't sure if we changed it to allow 30-70 on what could be developed.
it's 30% can be developed, 70% has to be left in conservation area.
And the 70%, so if the property was 70% swamp and wetlands that it couldn't build on anyway.
In the ordinance, it does not,
And should it,
it does not take into account whether it's wetlands or
Right.
not.
and should it.
That would be up to y'all if you want to exclude wetlands.
What do other counties do? Do you look at a couple of them? Hanover is always a good example.
I will check into it.
If you would, because again, I've got a piece of property and 70% of it I can't build on anyway, so I'll do a cluster, squeeze as many as I can. And that it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the cluster, which is designed to keep a lot of the ag area ag, keep the rural up to the county rather than be like squeeze.
Yeah, now, if you look at the ratio, the easement could be for agricultural. As we all know, though, what's happening is that they're using a bad piece of property to be able to develop a maximum number of houses.
If you look into what other counties do, that's one area with that particular cluster subdivision that I'd like for us to at least think about. You all might decide that you like it just as it is, and that's okay too, but I'd like to at least look at what other folks are doing and talk about it. Thank you.
The next one is modification to front yard regulations. Accessory buildings and structures shall not be constructed in a front yard on a lot that is less than 5 acres. An accessory building may be constructed in the front yard on a lot that is more than 5 acres, provided that the requirements for front yard setbacks, and I didn't put the article number in, are met and in conformity with all other applicable provisions of this ordinance. So if a front setback is 75 feet, if they have that accessory structure 76 feet, they would be in compliance. And if they have more than 5 acres.
Ms. Graham, what was the definition of front yard again?
Uh,
Where do we define those parameters?
okay, may not have put it in here, but it just says it shall be not be constructed in the front yard on a lot that is less than five, oh, okay, not less than 5 acres.
Either
Usually the front yard is from the front property line to the front of the house. And then anything from on the side would be from the front of the house to the rear of the house. And then the rear line is the rear of the house to the rear property line.
So
So the
What
whole
if-
front yard would be from the front of the house to the front property line.
if there was an accessory dwelling that was partially into the front yard, would that be denied then in that case?
Under the new ordinance, yes. Well, accessory structure, not.
Yeah, not dwelling,
Yeah.
I meant structure, yes.
A lot of these problems came up because there's a lot of riverfront properties in King William. So the house is riverfront. And so
Right.
nobody can build anything in front of their house, which is the rest of the lot, which is actually the back of the house. But I guess like this like technicality. And another thing I wanted to say, could we change it to 5 acres or more rather than just over 5 acres or less than 5 acres?
Well, we had, less than 5 acres, it could not be constructed in the front yard, because a lot of that's gonna be your subdivisions. But if they're on more than 5 acres, more than likely it's gonna be off the road a bit. And they'd have to be like 300 feet to be behind the front line of the house.
Right, that's
Ms.
what I
Graham,
mean.
well, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's what that's the part I wanted to say, 5 acres or more, because that's what I mean. People have set it up for 5 acres, but if you say more than 5 acres, if you have exactly 5 acres, you can't either.
But just reworded to 5 acres or more.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Everybody okay with that?
I had one comment. If we got more than 5 acres, and it can be allowed in the front yard, but it has to be whatever the setback is for that area, 75 feet or 100 feet or whatever that setback is. The concern I have with that is that the accessory structure not be, I think we should put a limitation on that, not be more than 50% of the floor area of the house or 70% or something like that, because you don't want a big barn stuck in front of the house.
Which is a slightly different direction from, so Mr. Greenwood's comment is not in conflict with your comment. They're both two different, because he was saying lower to 5 acres, not more than 5 acres. So yours is different.
5 acres or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be 5 acres or more, but in the case where we're allowed in the front yard in a 5 acre, then how did that read?
So if they're.
Yeah, I see what he's saying. Yeah, I think
If
it
they're in the
should be
front yard, they can't be more than 50% of the floor area. of the main
Original.
Dwelling.
yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
You good with that, Mr. Greenwood?
Yeah, that sounds better because 800 square feet is nothing.
Ms. Height, Mr. Sluter, y'all okay?
I think if it's on more than 5 acres, or, I don't know, I just think there's some situations where that would, if they want to build that, I think they should be able to build that.
Well,
Whether it looks good or not is.
And to emphasize to all of us here, as well as folks listening in, we're just giving Ms. Graham some general directions. When we see it within the context of the entire ordinance, one or more of us may throw our hands up to our head and go, oh my goodness, is that what we said? So I would make a note of your concerns. And then when you see it in the ordinance, we can revisit that. But as things stand right now, y'all are comfortable with that? With both of those things, generally speaking? Okay. Next one is, yes, next one, Ms. Graham.
Okay, the next one is, accessory dwelling unit. An accessory dwelling unit that is detached shall be no more than 800 gross square feet. I wanted to add unless a conditional use permit has been approved. So 800 square feet or less, right now in the AC district, is permitted by right. But we've gotten a lot of complaints that 800 square feet is not large enough for a family that's trying to move close to their parents to help take care of them. So it gives them that option to still go back and apply for a CUP if they want to build it larger than the 800 square feet that's permitted.
If we've had that many complaints, should we change the 800 to a larger figure?
Well, that would help. I think if we leave it at the 800, that may help people that are bringing in these small structures. We've had quite a few of those. I think one night we had like 4 in one night, and I think 3 of the 4 were small.
Right.
The other one was larger, but
This has been this actually predated your time on commission. And I feel very strongly in favor of us allowing up to 800 square feet without having a conditional use permit, because tons of folks were in the same situation that I'm in with an elderly parent who we're taking care of. My first house was only 900 square feet, so 800 square feet is large enough that if you've got a family coming in to help a parent, a lot of times you can move the parent to the smaller 800 square foot house, which gives enough room for both grandparents and an aide to help them, without actually building 2 houses that you then rent one out and sell it and break the land up the whole 9 yards. So again, in some rare instances, there may be a need for conditional use permit that we would say, oh yes, this is mom and apple pie, and it makes sense to make an exception for you. But before, we have to do that for everybody. So it added a lot of complexity and cost to everybody. And if you want 800 square feet or less, talk to Sherry and we're good to go. So I'm comfortable leaving it there. If we want to tweak the size, then we can sort of discuss that. But I would like to keep the 800 square feet with you can apply for conditional use permit. So if 800 does, you're good to go. If you need 900 or 1500 or 3000, you need to apply.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm a little confused. I thought that's what Mr. Wagner was talking about. I guess I was a little confused. I thought that's what he meant was going to be the 1500 or the half of the size of the original structure. That was just an extra sentence after the last paragraph.
that was for accessory buildings, storage buildings, garages.
Okay, this is the actual dwelling.
This
But-
is the
Yes.
accessory dwelling.
I thought we still had the accessory dwelling was still a certain percentage of the original structure too. I didn't think it was set at a certain square footage. I thought it was a percentage.
It can be attached, but if it's a detached accessory dwelling, we have a max of 800 square feet. under the
Okay.
ordinance. Yeah.
All right.
We good to go on that one? Good.
I think it's too small, but yeah.
All right, kennels.
Okay, so under the kennel, we've got provide a setback of at least 100 feet from property lines. And we've got provide a setback of at least 200 feet from any residence not on the associated parcel. Provide screening that is approved by the zoning administrator that visually blocks the front and the closest side property lines.
Now, the person who's here, and I apologize for going first, person who was here earlier tonight, how far was the kennel from her house?
With this particular one, and I'll be glad to provide y'all with the paperwork on it, that she has a 50-foot easement that goes back to some property that she owns. She doesn't own the easement, she can use the easement to access her property.
But her house is close to the kennel.
It's not that close. So, and I'll just email it to y'all so you will have it. So there is woods there, and then he planted some trees along that, but it's on her side of that easement and not on the easement closer on the inward side of the easement.
Well, the easement or not, the key is the distance from the house, 100 feet. 200 feet from the house is not all that long. I've got a neighbor, mercifully puts their dogs in the backyard, and we don't hear them barking every day, but we used to hear them for hours at a time. So is 200 feet from the house far enough away?
We can change the grade.
It'd be consistent with the
farming.
guinea fowl and so forth.
Want to change the grade?
Well, that's my thought with the commission. It's a joint effort. So what do y'all think? I know that particular citizen would be happy here.
He moved the kennel. He moved it away. He still has the pen there. If he decides he wants to put 4 dogs in there, we can't stop him, and it's not considered a kennel.
And this is just a private kennel that is not used for business use or anything like that.
Private kennels. And most of them are for hunt dogs.
Anybody else? Again, I jumped that turn. I like the last. Are y'all okay with that?
A private kennel can have how many dogs? There's no limit.
I'm not sure. I just know 5 is the magic number for it to be considered a kennel. They can have 4, it's not a kennel, but when the 5th dog goes in, it's a kennel.
They must be, the size of the kennel, I mean, the number of dogs should be based on the maximum, not the minimum.
The definitions say kennel private means keeping of 5 dogs or more, which are allowed, which are all owned and licensed by a single owner and kept on the same property.
Doesn't have a max.
No, it says keeping of 5 or more,
Which means
private
that
kennel.
somebody would have 30 dogs. I'm sure some hunters may well have that many or more.
Some of your hunt clubs do have a large amount of
Hunt
dogs.
club is not considered a private kennel.
Yeah. But we see a lot of them in the AC district that, they have their hunting cabin there and they'll have several pens that they have to hunt dogs for.
And there's a few of them that are within a mile of where we live, and I hear them all the time. Obviously, it's not loud because they're upwards of probably a mile or more away, but I still hear them though. So if I was on an adjacent property, 100, 200 feet away, I can imagine what that sounds like because it is incessant. But I'm just trying to think of how many people would be affected by changing that that distance to 300.
And I guess those folks would be grandfathered in, but anybody who knew.
Well, it's still 100 foot from the property line. It's just 300 foot from the residence.
Okay.
Put it at 3.
Are y'all okay with that?
Yeah.
What's next?
So the next one are some that Christina added. So we may have some duplicates, but we'll take a look at them. All right, so as provided in the Code of Virginia, section 15.2-2255.
Okay, my stuff got all mixed up. So where are we at?
That was on the table when you came in tonight.
Oh, okay, on the table. Okay, the 86, 456 was the first one.
80, well, it's 86-47. Powers and duties. And she just had a question on that. Is the agent the same as the zoning administrator? And has the board designated this by resolution? And I don't think we have.
John, this was in my large packet.
Yeah, this was in our packet.
That was
Well,
sent to us. Not
Mine was all mixed up anyway, so.
Not in the packet
This-
tonight, but the large one.
I will continue on. I'll fumble for a little bit.
It'll say at the top, review of zoning and subdivision ordinances adopted September 27th.
Its font looks different than what we just reviewed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it should be.
86,438?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. That's- Anyway, go ahead, continue on, please.
She had, I think, one page, and then Mr. Wagner had some comments on some of it as well. So her comment was, is the agent the same as the zoning administrator, and has the board designated this by resolution? I don't think the board has done this as a resolution. And the agent would be who the board would regulate. So I will get with her on that. Under exempt, she just had a comment. If a 25-acre lot is subdivided into 4 lots, how would this be enforced as a major subdivision? Well, we don't allow a 25-acre exempt parcel to be re-subdivided unless now we would let them do a family division. But other than that, they can't divide it again under our ordinance. And then she has under the minor, the prior ordinance for a minor subdivision on a state primary or secondary highway allowed only one access to such primary or secondary highway, and no lot in such subdivision could have direct access to said primary or secondary highway. The ordinance for farmstead subdivision used the same language, allowing farmstead subdivisions on Route 30 and on Route 360 with a single entrance. Well, under the new ordinance, our minors and our single lots, farmsteads will have one entrance, not multiple entrances every 300 feet. So, not sure on that one. And then under the farmstead subdivision, questions regarding the relationship between concept plan, preliminary site plan, and preliminary plats. So let me get some copies of this stuff and provide it in our next, because I'm not sure of this. And then the next one, review of the zoning ordinance for TCO. This is for some Mr. Wagner had on here. And in the TCO, the frontage landscaping, a landscape buffer of at least 25 feet in width. Comment required density of landscaping materials per 100 feet, 2 to 3 deciduous trees or 2 to 3 evergreen trees, and 3 shrubs at least 18 inches in height, and other ground cover unspecified, reasonably dispersed. This is a total of 2 to 3 trees and 3 shrubs for every 100 feet of frontage along our major highways, the TCO district. This appears to be sparse landscaping as evidenced by recent planting. Compare this with landscaping planting along 360 and Hanover County, both recent plantings and mature landscaping. Suggestion, review Hanover County zoning ordinance for landscaping requirements and commercial districts. Also review landscape planting on Route 360 in Hanover between Battlefield School and Mechanicsville, and take pictures for review and comparison.
What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Those are my thoughts.
Awesome. So I know what your thoughts are then.
Yeah, I would like to see a comparison of what other counties do, especially specifically counties that are similar to ours that are mainly rural, but have, you know, a very small commercial corridor, and see how they attack this. You know, maybe like a Goochland or see what they do, what their requirements are, and then go from there. I'd like to see some comparisons first.
Right?
I agree. I'd like some comparisons because, I'm not sure.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yeah, I think we should look at what other counties do too and maybe come back.
Yeah, and I agree entirely. But Hanover usually does things very, very well. I'm unimpressed with their solar plantings. They're Broadus Flats. But outside of that, they generally do a very good job. So I'd be very interested in some of the other accounts.
90% seized and 90% of the shrubs are deceased already.
They should have knocked those 2 houses down too. Those things look like crap.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, so the next thing is building exteriors. The building exterior shall be approved by the zoning administrator. This does not provide any guidelines or standards for building exteriors. Remember, Route 360 is a corridor that is a showcase for our county. And if we expect to attract quality development, the face of the development in the TCO should reflect what we expect for ongoing and new development. The original TCO ordinance from 2006 had requirements for building exteriors as follows. Cement board, building materials for exterior siding shall consist of brick, natural stone, stucco, split face block, wood, cement board, or glass. Trim and facial materials may be vinyl, metal, wood, or other materials that appropriately complement the exterior siding. These same materials are required in our current PUD ordinance. Suggest we review the above noted materials for current usage in building construction and provide standards for determination of building exteriors. I am personally opposed to corrugated metal and vinyl siding as these appear more appropriate for industrial building exteriors. Well, we pretty much touched on that. I think.
Right.
So I think we're probably good. The next thing.
One suggestion there,
Uh-huh.
that you might want to discuss. Another way we can go about that is that if somebody wants to use, let's say, a corrugated metal or something that we deem to be not as high quality, maybe we could require them to use what we want them to use on the front that actually faces the highway, rather than that they can on the sides and the rear use their desired material.
That's what we have under the old ordinance. If it was visible from the 360 or 30, they couldn't put it. So they could put it along the rear of the building, but they could not put it where it was visible. But it got taken out in the new ordinance. And the next one is primary zoning district yard, height and bulk regulations. The minimum lot area for R1, depending on public utilities, requires the following: 15,000 square feet for properties served by both public water and public sewer, 20,000 square feet for properties served by public water only or public sewer only, 30,000 square feet for properties not served by public water or public sewer. The previous ordinance required 40,000 square feet for properties not served by public water or public sewer. It is my opinion that 30,000 square feet is not adequate for properties with on-site wells and septic systems.
So the recommendation there is to go to 40,000 square feet.
That would
Same
be,
as the old ordinance.
that would be consistent with what we're discussing with the cluster.
Right.
We want the higher density, we need to have, hooked up to public utilities. I mean, that's the more we can encourage that and discourage.
It is hard to get septic and well on a lot less than an acre. It's pretty tight,
Do you recommend going with that number?
going back to 40.
Y'all okay with that? Mr. Greenwood?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Go ahead. What's next?
So the next thing is the PUD. Suggest that we review the ordinance in detail. So I will have copies of that for you at the next meeting that we have to discuss this.
We have the, in the new ordinance, the from future land use map, we're showing 3 properties on 360 as but some inputs on it. and we will be getting into that a lot. Evie Sloan had indicated to me that she had reviewed our flood ordinance, and she said it had a lot of problems. So I've looked at it briefly, and I do see some issues, but I do think we need to do a fairly thorough review of that, because the PUD developments will require a master plan. And so when we're looking at that development, one of them on 360, right at 30, when and if plans come in for that, then we will be looking at that as a PUD, as a next master plan, and we will have a lot of say in how that's developed. So I think we need to be pretty certain that we do that.
Did Ms. Sloan give you in particular, she just said, look at the whole thing?
She, at the time, I think she cited a couple of things.
Well, that is a kind of specialized ordinance that could have a very big impact on the county. And again, with all these, I hope that we are as clear of the expectations. The expectations are reasonable and protect the community without unduly burdening the developers. So I think it's worth us all looking at the entire PUD. If you could look at some other counties to see if there's anything that strikes you that we could do better. And I think it's quite
You just said something that always bothers me. You just said something that always bothers me. Without unduly burdening the developers.
Well, I don't mind burdening them. I don't want to unduly burden them for
no,
no
we-
reason. But we can agree to disagree on that one.
In looking at how we want this county to develop that, we're not going to get probably the top development, but we want to attract developers to come in to build quality developments. And if we're allowing sub-quality developments just because we can't think a developer, don't think a developer can afford it, then we're forcing those better developers out. So I think, and I understand we've got some quality developers.
And I'm excited to have them come.
I think,
Uh,
I think
not
we
really-
want to do everything we can to encourage the right
Yeah.
other development.
And I don't think either of us are suggesting anything to be put in or taken at this point. So we can, and looking at the things that we may want to take out and put in, because like I said, when we have to look at. So. What else do you have? Anything? Is that it?
Well, two more things. On the ordinances, do you want to do this as a work session, or do you want to readdress it at the next meeting? I've got a couple of dates if y'all want to try to do a work session.
What do we have for our July meeting? Much of anything, or that can always change, but
I'm not sure right now.
okay. What's y'all's pleasure to do it as a work session? That way we.
I think it would be better to do it as a work session. That way we can just concentrate on that.
Okay.
So they have the 21st and the 23rd available, which is a Tuesday and a Thursday.
Those are Tuesdays.
21st is Tuesday, 23rd is Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. Do either of those dates work for everybody? That's 2 weeks from tonight. Or 2 weeks from next Thursday. Yeah. Just Mr. Greenwood, will you be on vacation?
Yeah, I don't have my calendar with me. I don't know.
All right, would you send out those 2 dates to all 5 of us and ask us to weigh in? Huh?
I need to double check
Yeah.
mine as well.
So the last thing I have is to do, give you an update on Sweet Sue. I know it's getting late. Do you want me to carry it to our next meeting, or do you want me to briefly?
Is it in depth or just a brief?
Well, I'll try to break it down real fast.
Well, no, it's-
Quickly. They did get a 1-year extension. On this particular one, it was brought up that the General Assembly granted another extension on land use. So it was granted that they have another year, effective July 1 of this year until next summer to start the project. That was one thing. A couple of other things is there had been some questions on the roadway going in, which I do have pictures, but time constraint, I don't have to show them.
All right.
All the wetlands on the roadway are non-title. It will not, we need wetlands approval. It will not be exempt from DEQ requirements or the requirements for submittal of a water quality impact assessment, which they have submitted, or the issuance of a land disturbance permit. So they are working toward that. And I just had some diagrams of the road, in the PowerPoint. Another thing that they have done is, and this is part of DEQ requirements, in their buffer area, they are encroaching into the buffer area, and not with any structures or anything, but with the drainage structures that have to be put into place per DEQ requirements. So I had some pictures of the areas and some mappings that they had provided of the different, it's only a couple of areas that they're actually breaking into that 100-foot.
By how much?
It's not a lot. Do you want me to pull the pictures up?
What we'll save it for tonight. And when I asked you about what was next, I was thinking we were still on subdivision and zoning ordinance.
Nope, we're
So
done.
can I go back to that just one second?
Sure, sure.
We have in our zoning ordinance light industry, and we don't say much about it. We also don't have any light industry areas marked. We've talked off and on for at least 5 years, maybe longer, about having light industry in the commerce park. Some people even refer to it as the industrial park. It's like, no, it's a commerce park. I had a question asked me a few days ago. In any area that we designate as light industry, can they have commercial uses in there? I said, I think they can.
Yeah.
Do we need to add anything to the zoning ordinance to flesh out what you can, what you can't do, generally speaking, to make it easier for you if you get people who are requesting rezonings, to be able to say, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. If there's something above and beyond that, we'll put that as a condition unique to that application.
I think it's pretty much spelled out in the table,
Okay.
but I'll make sure we have a table provided at our meeting, and we'll just kind of go down.
Yeah.
The industrial areas.
Yeah, with the future land use map, we probably should designate it the Commerce Park for light industry, which has been talked about a lot. We used to have one in there, the fellow that did the Christmas ornaments, and it was actually light industry, and then he moved that on 360, and he sold off to China and made a bunch of money. But one of the things that the economic development folks have talked about is we're not really ready for an Amazon plant or a paper company in West Point, the uranium plant, or the rare ones that we're lucky to get. Most of what we get will probably be light industry. So I want to make sure that we have identified places where we think it should go, and if there are requirements that we would expect, that we lay it out to folks. So if we can add that to the zoning subdivision, it's okay as is, that's fine, or here's the tweaks we make. We don't do that. Could be allowed next year, but
There are some light industry that are allowed in the B1 district. So we'll make a copy of that, have that. So
Okay.
it won't take us very long to go through it.
Okay, very good. The covered suite, Sue, what else? Do you have anything?
That was it.
So you have the new business. Does anyone else have any new business? No? And any questions? But thank you for all the Edmonds reports. Any questions on that? If so, if not, you can always forward to Ms. Graham. So that brings us, if y'all are okay with that, which brings us up to the commissioner comments. Mr. Greenwood, since you're not in the room, I'm liable to forget you. So let me start with you for commissioner comments.
Okay, and not too much. Just sorry I'm not there. We had our family reunion, which we're finally able to go on. So we're doing that with my dad's side. So I'm here in West Virginia. So thanks for letting me join Zoom, and it works pretty good. I'm surprised. I heard all y'all, and I heard the comments, I heard the people, except when some of the people walked away from the microphones. Yeah. thanks. Thanks Sherry and everybody, Barbara, for all the work y'all do in your department. So thanks for keeping us up. I guess I missed out on the packet you got at the desk because I missed some stuff I couldn't quite follow along, but I had all the old stuff, so that's good. So thanks.
Very good. Ms. Height?
Not that we have as much in attendance right now in the room, but I'd like to thank everyone that is still here and for all the ones that were here earlier. It was nice to have people come forward and be able to speak in the public hearing and let us know how they feel. I just wanted to take a quick moment to go back as far as the public hearing was concerned to articulate that the concerns that I had were more than just the violations that Mr. Sneed has had as far as the property is concerned, but some of the clarifications that were needed as far as what would be needed from VDOT and what would be needed from the health department, et cetera, and some of the adjacent property owners that spoke and said, as far as the safety of those who come to his property, if these buildings or structures that have already been put on haven't been done properly with permits, et cetera, that from a safety and fire hazard, that it puts people in jeopardy. Anyway, those are just some of my additional concerns that I had related to the public hearing that I didn't articulate earlier. But again, thank you to Sherry and staff for everything that you've done, getting our packages together and helping us with any questions that we've had, as well as the Planning Commission members, for everything that they do on a regular basis to try to keep us doing the right things. Thank you.
Wagner?
I'm quite certain that we're going to have repercussions from our decision tonight. And I expect those, but I think we certainly did the right thing. I hope the board will take this seriously and take everything that we put in that resolution into consideration. I think it's high time that this situation be taken care of. It's been disrupting a segment of our population in this county for far too long now. And it's high time that something is done to curb the abuses by the applicant. Thank you.
I second other commissioners' statements and completely agree. It's not an easy thing to go through a hearing like this. When you've got somebody who's trying to provide a way to provide for for his for his home and his family and I'm very much a pro property owner. You pay property taxes. It's your land. It's yours. Do what you need to do. But all that stops when it starts to affect other people. Your freedoms end where mine begin, and I feel like that was a pretty clear picture tonight of where that line was, and that that line was way over the bound. So I agree. I think we did the right decision in voting to deny that permit. So thank you to the staff for putting this together tonight. My only complaint, Ms. Graham, is that you weren't able to put a staple in it. But no, thank you. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into this behind the scenes to have stuff just sitting right here on the desk for. So thank you for that.
So by the way, Mr. Ashcraft said the reason he wouldn't do this tonight is his wife's birthday.
Yes, yes, I'd like to thank staff as usual. I especially appreciate the advanced time to go over this. Anytime we have a hearing like this, we need extra time to go through things. I remember some of your predecessors give us a packet like this 2 days before the meeting. It was like, no, we are not able to absorb this. So thank you both for the good work and for the timing. I want to thank also my fellow commissioners. If this was an easy job, they would need us. I asked Ms. Graham when we passed the zoning ordinance, was it reasonable and enforceable? And she said it was, and I believe it is. And I'm also a property rights nut to the extreme, but our job is to balance the rights of the landowner with the rights of the neighbors to enjoy their property with the needs of the county. And I love win-win-wins. It happens sometimes, not as often as I would like. More often, somebody has to be disappointed, but I feel very strongly that if supervisors approve this conditional use permit after they hear it, then anybody, anywhere in the county can do anything and just come back and say, oh, well, we'd like to get approval for this. And so I hope the supervisors will heed our vote and support that. And with that, if there's not an objection, I will adjourn the meeting. Any objections? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
That's all parallel.
Oh, yeah, we'll see that.
Looks like it's